Everyone knows what a peak is in Valorant, but very few people know how to apply the major rules of peaking. This nuanced understanding of peaking angles is what separates the lower level of play from the Immortal and Radiant players. These high-level players, they have a really strong skill set. Manipulating peaks, as well as being educated on peaks, is a common trend in the high ranks. The better your peaks are, the more fights you win. It's really as simple as that. There's a few peaks that you're probably aware of too. Jiggle peaking, wide swings, regular peak, close peak, crouch peaking, and many, many more. But today, we're going to teach you the fundamentals to a proper peak and how to manipulate peaks. We'll also talk a little bit about when exactly you should be using these peaks, as it's not always cookie cutter. We're going to make it super easy to understand exactly when and where you should be using each peak throughout your matches. Now, we're going to start off by changing what you know about a certain concept in Valorant. Now, what if we told you angle advantage truly doesn't matter as much as you may think it does? Now, for those of you that aren't informed as to what angle advantage is, we can take a step back real quick and explain it for you. Angle advantage, in the simplest terms, refers to how whoever is furthest from an angle will see the other player first. This can lead to many players believing that they're not exposing their character as much as they truly are. This means if there is a player peeking close to a structure, they're going to be at a disadvantage almost every single time. Now, as a rule of thumb, you should peek and hold as far away from the angle as possible. Except, well, that's not always true. The issue is, it's really not that simple. Sometimes it's actually better for you to be closer to the wall. But why is that? You need to remember why angle advantage is important. Here are some important examples when you should prioritize peeking further from a wall. Number 1, when you're slow peeking. When you're slow walking around the map, it's important that you're not peeking close to the wall. Doing this gives the enemy substantially more time to react to your presence. Look at how easily you're spotted doing this. Number 2, when you're shouldering. Shouldering for info is pretty darn important in Valorant, but just make sure if you're doing this close to a wall, you're clearing as much of the angle as possible. Many times we see people shouldering angles and they're just exposing themselves to enemies without gathering information. Now, in an angle like this, it's best to shoulder the entrance to B main first from far away on the angle. Then adjust yourself so you can shoulder the next angle properly without exposing yourself unnecessarily. There are times when you should be peeking close to the angle, but we're going to go over that a little bit later. Exposing yourself unnecessarily is really the main thing you need to concern yourself with in these situations. And this is why angle advantage doesn't really matter. It'll really only cause you to lose a fight in a few very rare instances. And these few instances are the ones you need to be aware of. And that's really it. As long as you as a player grasp the concept of angle advantage, you can counter the enemy's advantage with ease and precision. Tell me if this sounds like you. You watch all these aim guides telling you how to peek and counter strafe and aim train, but nothing seems to fix your aim. Chances are, you're heavily overcomplicating the process, and it is a lot easier than you might think it is. That's where we come in. Our courses are designed to simplify the game into stupid simple terms so that literally anyone could start climbing. It's like if you were just given a checklist to start top fragging in Valorant. Wait, actually, it's exactly that. That's what we've done. Recently, we broke down players like Shroud's aim into a simple 6-step method that every player can follow to start dominating their matches. Now, aimers like Shroud, they've spent thousands of hours perfecting their craft to get to the point that they're at today. And the problem is, most of you don't have that kind of time to get good at Valorant, and we understand that. And the game isn't exactly too fun when you suck either. We get that too. That's why we put in the time to simplify the game for you, so that you can focus on the things that really matter and climb as fast as possible. But don't just take our word for it, because we also offer a rank improvement guarantee. So if you don't climb, you don't pay, and it's really that simple. This is our promise to you that our product really does work. So check it out using the link in the description below, and we'll see you there. So now that we've gone over angle advantage, let's talk deeper on why it doesn't always matter. So let's break down what a good peek is, since that's what you all came here for in the first place. A good peek is a combination of speed, fighting only one opponent at a time, and being able to visualize what you will look like from the enemy's perspective. To simplify it, speed is achieved by moving in a straight line by using the A or D key. If you're swinging diagonally, you won't achieve the same speed as if you were to peek holding the A or D key. Picking careful fights is important, so you peek with confidence knowing that you're only fighting one player. Now this also goes hand in hand with knowing where the enemy is. And finally, visualizing what you will look like is also important, as it'll help you pick the most optimal way to swing the opponent. Now that we've hit all the key points, let's break it down a bit further in order to help you all apply these principles. Now, there's a few issues you also want to worry about when peeking, and we're going to explain them real quick here. Sometimes you actually don't want to be as far away from the angle as possible. The most important part of your peek is that you're able to smoothly peek only using the A and D key. Sometimes, if you place yourself as far away from the angle as possible, you're going to run into a situation where you'll actually hit a wall if you're only using A and D. So in this case, we would call this a bad peek. You also generally want to avoid peeking with your back along a wall, because it'll make it easier for enemies to land their shot on you, since your head is going to be lined up with visual elements on the walls behind you. This is where our center line rule comes in. The center rule. This rule is for players learning how to peek effectively, and it states that whenever you go to peek an angle, always try to peek just behind the center line of the area you're peeking from. This is going to give you almost as much angle advantage as possible, and also ensures you're not lined up with the back wall and have enough room to peek properly. This rule can be applied to almost every rank in the game too, and although there are exceptions to this rule, this will almost always create for good fights for players who aren't sure how to peek. Let's take a look at some other options you can use aside from the center rule though too. Let's talk about speed. Speed is definitely important, simply because the faster a target is, the harder it is for the enemy to time the shot or adjust their crosshair to you. This means that if you have info on where you're being held from, you can best determine the way you're gonna want to peek. If there's a player holding far away from you, the best swing would be a fast swing, holding A or D in a straight line. You can even throw a shoulder peek in order to force their crosshair closer to the angle. This is going to help because many players will see a shoulder peeking enemy and naturally put their crosshair closer to the angle. This tiny mind game is going to allow you to swing right past their crosshair in many instances. If there's a player holding somewhat close to you, sometimes it may even be best to swing close to the angle to catch the player holding you off guard. Now, in a few situations, the speed you gain from swinging closer to the angle negates the angle advantage the enemy player may have. This is due to the fact that the closer you are, the faster you move across their screen, and, in turn, the harder you are to hit. This is also great if you shoulder them from far off, then swing close, as the enemy is going to most likely be holding where you shouldered last. This is why visualizing what you look like from the enemy's perspective is so incredibly important. If you have a keen understanding of what you're going to look like to the enemy, you can manipulate fights using your peeks. This is the importance of having a grasp of how you look to the enemy. You can use this to easily give yourself that small, tiny edge that you need in all your gunfights. Use this knowledge to impact the way you think about your peeks, because they're all going to be different. Don't let people tell you that swinging far and back to a wall is the absolute best way to swing angles, because it's just flat out wrong. Decision-making is the utmost important factor when you're peeking, so use these aspects that we just talked about to determine how you approach a fight and a peek. This is why we talked about the center rule. You won't always know the best way to approach a fight. The center rule is here to help you in those situations, and it's a solid and standard way to peek, and is the peek you should generally be using in most situations. Okay, so we've talked in depth about executing peeks, so what better than to take a look at one of Valorant's best aimers and see how he applies these guidelines to make his skill really stand out amongst other pros. We're looking at Demon 1. His exemplary peaks can be dissected in a way that even Radiant players can learn from what he does.
3, 2, 1, rush.
He's behind the box.
Nice. Nice, stun side.
One enemy remaining.
Nice. Ace.
The first kill is already pretty crazy, and you can see Demon 1 crouches into this commonly played angle, and the reason he does this is simple. Enemies at any level above Diamond will usually always be aiming at the back wall, with really good headshot crosshair placement. Using this knowledge, Demon 1 offsets himself from the wall, then swings and crouches into the angle. Notice how the aimer isn't crouching, then swinging. He utilizes his speed, then crouches mid-swing. This means he gets his full speed potential, stops his speed with a crouch, then fires. The second kill is fairly easy for Demon 1. He's already spamming the box in anticipation for a player to peek from it. Once the jet peaks, he quickly adjusts his crosshair and dispatches of the enemy player in an instant. Moving on to the third kill. Let's slow it down even further. The King of Aim hard clears the Omen as he's already dealt with 2 other players. He does this just in case the enemy stacks A site, which is common if the defender's side is actively fighting for this space. Demon 1 uses his speed by holding the D key and also sets himself up by using a straight path into the enemy screen. From here, what's super interesting is how he moves. He does an outstanding job of swinging, taking a fight, then repositioning himself mid-fight in this instance. You can see after his initial burst and crouch, Demon 1 immediately moves a few steps right, then re-engages. This allows him to take his time in a fight and also makes it extremely difficult for the enemy to deal with him. Moving unpredictably is insanely important when taking a peek, and also when in a gunfight. If we play it one more time, take a note how this is the exact thing the enemy Omen does. He just loses the gunfight. This concept is well known across higher level Radiant players, and you can see both players abusing this movement tech. In this fourth kill, we can observe as he clears the first angle, then pins himself against the close wall for a fast and close peek. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier in the video here, abusing close angle peeks in synergy with speed to catch the enemy off guard and get in a super fast peek. Once Demon 1 has cleared out the first angle, you can see he knows there will be a player rotating. He goes against the wall and executes a perfect fast peek while up against the wall. These peeks are extremely hard for any player at any level to deal with when done correctly. You can see Demon 1 has an outstanding grasp of visualizing what he looks like from the enemy's perspective. In the single fight, he put himself at a slight disadvantage. He uses his movement to put himself back into the advantage. This beautiful playstyle can be achieved fairly easily when remembering your fundamentals of peeking. Just make sure you're being cognizant of the fights you're taking and just how easily you're able to manipulate them using your combination rule, and you, very soon, will be a master at peeking. Alright though guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and we think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's kind of like a gym membership guaranteeing you that you're gonna get ripped. Your local gym would probably go bust if they offered you that. But not us, because we've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the internet. We add new courses every month with over 1,000 guides curated into over 50 courses. No one can compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord so that you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game who will respond to every question you ask. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you're serious about improving your game. So that's going to be all for this one today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.